What is going on, guys, and welcome to the Halloween franchise tier list ranking. I decided to go ahead and do one of these and get some brief thoughts out on all 13 of these films, and then here in a day or two we'll do the traditional ranking where I actually put them in order from worst to best. So, as typical with the tier list ranking, we've got 5 categories, and the categories for this ranking from best to worst is The Devil's Eyes, Happy Halloween, Evil Dies Tonight, Stop It, Stop It, Stop It! And the dreaded Trick or Treat, motherfucker. So as I said, 13 films. We're going from the original Halloween in 1978 all the way up to the recently released Halloween Ends. I'm going to give you my brief thoughts on why I've categorized them as I have, and then we'll get in even deeper thoughts whenever we get into the actual ranking video. So if you enjoy this and you enjoy the Halloween franchise, I've got another 2 weeks or so of content planned around this franchise and this new film's release, so be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of that in the future. Starting off with the OG, the one that started it all, John Carpenter's Halloween, and of course this one is going all the way up to The Devil's Eyes. This is probably the best in the franchise, always and forever. I mean, there's not really going to be a Halloween film that's going to top this in most people's eyes, and I belong to that group. Something about the way that John Carpenter brings the simplicity to this, and it was just such a simple idea about this evil incarnate, this person that is very clearly human but also has the supernatural edge and stalks babysitters. It's just very basic, but it's all in his execution. It's all in the excellence of what John Carpenter brings in most of the films in his filmography, and so it's been a proven classic that has spawned one of the most successful slasher franchises of all time, and it's still one of the most celebrated horror films that have ever been created. Moving on to Halloween 2, I'm going to stick this one in Happy Halloween. This is a sequel that I always enjoy watching, but there's always the same frustrations with it. It's the most like John Carpenter's original film. You can almost watch them back to back as one film in one night, and I like that about it. I like the fact that it keeps Myers more in the darkness, and you get the POV stuff, and he's kind of in the shadows and emerges from the shadows. It's one of the few movies that still kind of hones in on that supernatural edge that the character has. He's a little too zombified when he walks. I definitely don't love the performance, the physical performance by Dick Warlock near as much as Nick Castle or some of the others that are going to be on this list. Some really good kills in here, and I love the hospital setting. This is more of a Friday the 13th styled Halloween film. You have the original Friday the 13th that was made as a response to the original Halloween, and then you have Halloween 2 that was made as a response to Friday the 13th. And if I'm being honest, I've never been a fan of the sibling angle. I know that that is the storyline in most of this franchise, and some movies do it better than others, but John Carpenter himself never liked it and just kind of threw it in there just to have an excuse for a new story, and I tend to agree with John Carpenter. It was never needed. Now we're on to Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. Not a fan favorite, but certainly coming around to being a fan favorite, and it's absolutely one of mine. That is The Devil's Eyes all day, baby. This is a movie that I kick myself in the ass for not watching more often in my youth. I listened to everybody else that said, man, to hell with that movie. Doesn't even have Myers in it. It's fucking, don't even talk about Halloween 3. No, we're talking about Halloween 3 because it's one of the best movies in this fucking franchise. I don't care if the dude in the mask is in it or not. Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is so cool and unique and creepy and effective. It's genuinely one of the best like Halloween themed horror films of all time. If this was released simply as Season of the Witch, this would have been a classic all the way back in the 80s, and people would have never shit on this movie the way that they did for a long time. It's finally starting to kind of get its heyday here in the past 5 to 10 years. People are coming around on it, but this is a movie that I watch every single October, and I'm more inclined to put this in than I am the original John Carpenter's Halloween sometimes. Sorry. Facts. Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. This is a sequel that I was not a fan of for a long time, but I have warmed up to it. I'm sticking it up in Happy Halloween. This is one that the mask, I think, was always kind of what kept me at arm's distance with it, because it's one of the worst masks in the entire franchise, and that'll never change, unfortunately. It's abysmal. You can give me all the excuses in the world that you want. Well, it's from a Carpenter story. I don't fucking care. It's a studio-produced movie. There's no excuse that this mask looks this bad. But, moving on past the mask debacle, it's a really good classic Halloween story. It's trying to harken back to John Carpenter's Halloween, and I think it does a mostly successful job with that. I like Jamie Lloyd as a character in this film quite a bit, and of course you get Rachel, her adoptive sister, her foster sister, that is a really good addition to that. Another really good, like, kind of final girl in this franchise. I think that a lot of the kills are great in this. I like the fact that Michael kind of systematically takes down the town, where he goes after the power, he goes after the police force, and then goes after Jamie. That's really unique. And it's just got a really good pace to it. So this is one that every time I rewatch it, I like it a little bit more. Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. This movie sucks balls. Trick or treat, motherfucker. This is my least favorite Halloween film still to this day. It's just boring. Like, there's some bad Halloween films in this franchise. There's some movies that do some extremely ridiculous, unforgivable shit, but they're at least still watchable and entertaining in some sick way. Halloween 5 is a shitty movie that bores the piss out of me every single time that I watch it. They destroy the twist ending of Halloween 4. They destroy the great character of Rachel literally in the first 15 minutes of the movie as if she's of no value whatsoever. They hand the keys over to Tina, one of the most insufferably annoying characters in slasher history. They make Jamie Lloyd a mute for most of the movie. Loomis is ridiculous in this. Michael's mask is one of the worst. The physical performance by Don Shanks, not one of my favorites. Not a whole lot of kills to really be noteworthy. There's just nothing in this movie I really care about. Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, and we're not going to split it between the two different cuts. Just in general, this is an Evil Dies Tonight movie for me. A lot of things that I like about it. One of the best Myers, one of the best Myers masks, really good atmosphere and lighting, some really good kills, some interesting enough characters, but then there's a lot of things in this movie that's just fucking stupid. The way that they treat Jamie Lloyd and Paul Rudd's performance. I love Paul Rudd, but those of you that say that he's amazing in this, I don't know what the fuck crack you're smoking, but keep puffing, I guess. There is incomprehensible plot no matter what cut you watch in this film. There's no perfect cut to watch. They're both equally weird and equally incomplete in very different ways. And so it's just an absolute mixed bag of an experience. It's almost a great Halloween film, and I'm sure that there is a version of this movie out there that they could cobble together that could maybe crack into the Happy Halloween category for me, but as is, no matter what cut that I watch, this is always a frustrating watch. Halloween H2O 20 years later. Always been one of my favorites. I'm sticking it up in Happy Halloween. Now, I will say that I didn't love it as much as I remember loving it the most recent time that I rewatched it, but still one of my favorites. This is the only one, no, this is the first one, excuse me, that I saw in the theaters as a kid. I rewatched it all the time. I love this version of Laurie Strode. This is probably my favorite version of Laurie Strode. She's broken, she's certainly damaged, certainly a little fucked up from the events, but she's still strong and capable and a mother, and she's just more human to me than the Sarah Connor version we got in the new trilogy, with the exception of Ends. She's pretty human in that one. I do not hate the Myers performance in this film. You know, I think Chris Durand is fine as Myers. Not one of the best. Certainly not the dumpster fire that people make it out to be. The masks that they use in this movie, yeah, there's not a whole lot of excuse for that. Being able to see Michael, his eyes, like he just saw a rat, no, that's unforgivable. I like the characters. I like some of the kills. I like the pacing of this. This is the Scream era H2O Halloween, and I dig it for that. So yeah, and it's got one of the best, arguably the best ending of any of the Halloween films, with Laurie just fucking taking it, man. Taking it! Halloween Resurrection, absolutely. It's got to go in the category it was named after. Trick or treat, motherfucker. This is, wow. This exists. It's not a movie that offends me on the level of some of you hardcore Halloween fans. It's clearly one of the worst, as I've put it in that bottom category. But when you get past the Myers stuff, it's a decently watchable 2000s horror film. It's just like with Hellraiser Hellworld. It's a terrible Hellraiser film, but I could still watch it on that kind of schlocky 2000s horror film vibe, and I get the same satisfaction with this. So the opening, unforgivable, terrible ending for that character, completely destroys the ending of H2O, and that's one of the biggest things that will piss me off about a sequel, is if you have a shitty follow-up that fucks up the better movie. Hello, Alien 3. And the whole thing with Busta Rhymes, I laughed when I was a kid and watched this. I was like, that's kind of funny. He's doing karate. And then as soon as my balls dropped and I actually got some taste, I was like, oh, wow. Who the fuck signed off on that idea? Now we are at Rob Zombie's Halloween, and you know what? As much as I want to love this movie, as much as I want to come around on it, as many times as I've given it chances, this is a stop it, stop it, stop it! Especially the first act. You can stop that shit right now. So Rob Zombie's Halloween is 3 acts and 3 very different responses for me. The first act I think is garbage. I think it's unwatchable. It's atrocious dialogue, atrocious characters, and it's a miserable fucking experience every time I go back to it. The middle act is better, but it's a gigantic missed opportunity, not nearly enough Michael and Loomis, which is one of the most fascinating things that we never actually got to see in the original movies, and we barely get to see any of it here. Then you get the third act, which is just like a heightened Rob Zombified version of the 1978 film, and I dig that. I have a good time with that third act. So this is a movie that... Any time that I rewatch it, I kind of wish that I just skipped the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and just kind of start from there. And it really doesn't kick in for me until the last 30 to 40 minutes. So a lot of cool things, a lot of interesting things in here that makes it stand out from the original movie. Rob certainly makes it his own, but like most of Rob Zombie's films, I just don't operate on that wavelength. Now, one of the few exceptions, as angry as people get for when I say this continuously, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is a happy Halloween for me. Look, as many times as I try to watch Rob Zombie's Halloween and see the movie that some of you guys say is one of the best of the franchise, I always watch Halloween 2 and want to see the dumpster fire, like, eye-bleeding, miserable experience that some of you guys say that this movie is, and I just never get it. I understand that it makes some bold swings. It does some very different things. Michael grunts, depending on what cut that you watch. He actually utters a word, and I don't like that cut, so I totally get that. Loomis, horrible decision, what they did with him. The white horse shit can go fuck itself. But everything beyond that, everything beyond those couple of things, I think this is actually a really well done Halloween film. I think it's got some really good atmosphere. I think it's one of the better directed movies by Rob Zombie. It's one of the more tolerable written movies by Rob Zombie. There's moments where you get that like Rob Zombie bullshit, like where Richard Brake says fuck like 87 times in a minute, in that scene where Laurie Strode's going nuts and she's like, you fucking bitch, fucking cunt, fucking bitch. Like, yeah, that's where he creeps in, gets his dialogue in there. But it's not nearly as much throughout the movie as the previous Halloween film or most of his other films. So to me, it's one of the more tolerable ones. I like how brutal Myers is in this. I like that he uses the mask only when he's in kill mode. I like the fact that he grunts and has a little bit more visceral nature to him. I really don't mind exploring a more fucked up and broken version of Laurie Strode because we've seen that character in a million other different ways. This is an interesting exploration of grief and trauma, and I am kind of there for that. I love the fact that you get to see Laurie actually find out with Loomis's book that she is Myers' sister, which is something that we never got to see in the original run of films. And I think that was actually really well written for a sequence for Rob Zombie of how she was able to find out. There's a lot of things about this movie that I watch, and I like it. I know I'm on an island. I know some of you guys despise this movie. I know some of you guys despise hearing people say anything but negative things about it, but I just gotta be honest. There's things I get. I totally hear you on a couple of things, but there's so much about this movie I still to this day think is incredibly misunderstood. And now we are on to the new trilogy and Halloween 2018. Now, I gotta be honest with you, this one I kind of tossed around between Evil Dies Tonight and Happy Halloween, but I'm gonna stick it in Evil Dies Tonight because it's still not a Halloween film that completely works for me. It's gotten slightly better for me over the past 4 years. When I rewatch it, I have a decent enough time with it now that I have the rest of the story. It does make the movie a little more tolerable knowing that, you know, this was billed as the final confrontation, and when you watch the film back in 2018, it was apparent that they pulled a little switcheroo on you. But now that you can continue on, it's a little less of a blow. I think this is one of the best directed Halloween films. There's some great camera work, some really good cinematography. I like the whole like one-shot tracking sequence in the middle of the film. One of the best, if not the best, physical performance by James Jude Courtney as Michael Myers. I love the mask. The 2018 mask is my favorite of the franchise. I think that there is some really interesting things done here as far as some sequences and some kill sequences and how they decided to go back to the original film. There's some stuff in the script that's well done. I also think that the dialogue in this movie is pretty rough, especially when they're trying to be funny. I think it's some of the worst humor in the entire franchise. Completely falls on its face, in my opinion. I think that, especially now having seen the full trilogy, I probably would have preferred if this movie was what they dubbed it as, which was the final confrontation, and we got something like the Halloween Ends final confrontation in the third act of this movie, and they didn't manufacture it into a trilogy when it didn't need to be. So it's still a movie that I like, but I don't love. You know, I get why people are so enamored with it, but as many times as I have watched it, I've still stayed pretty consistent with my thoughts from the first time that I watched it. Now we are at Halloween Kills, and unlike Halloween 2018, this is a movie that gets worse for me every single time that I watch it. And I'm sticking it in stop it, stop it, stop it! As in, stop fucking saying Evil Dies Tonight, bitch! Halloween Kills, look, if you're here for carnage, this movie gives you everything you could ask for plus more. You're going to leave very full and satisfied with your bloodlust. There's some great kills, extreme kills, and lots of kills. I mean, when you title a movie Halloween Kills, you better fucking deliver that. And they delivered that. Another really good physical performance by James Jude Courtney. I like the burnt mask. It's not my favorite of the franchise, but it's certainly, top 5, I would say. I like it. But honestly, beyond Michael himself and the kills, the script, and especially the dialogue and the characters that say said dialogue in this movie, it just gets worse for me every single time that I watch it. You get the characters like Laurie and Frank in the hospital that are just waxing away poetically and Shakespearean-like with the evil and it has to die, he's here for me. And it's so fucking ridiculous and over the top and heavy-handed that it makes me cringe. Even more so than it did the first time that I watched it or the second time that I watched it. It's almost insufferable to me, the way that the dialogue was written in this film. It's ridiculous. The whole middle segment of this, where they decide to dive into some social commentary about mob mentality and mob rules and how that can negatively affect people or you can go after the wrong person, that whole segment is a good idea on paper, was executed absolutely ridiculous. You got Danny DeVito running around and the whole fucking town thinks that's Michael Myers. That'll never work for me. You can give me all the defenses in the world about, well, they're just mad, they're seeing red. Yeah, fuck all that. That still looks ridiculous. Put somebody who's 6 feet tall and has the same body type as Myers, that entire issue goes away, but that was ridiculous to me. So that whole segment of the movie, I think, is an absolute just dead air waste. And I don't really care for how powerful they make Myers in this, and as a contrast, make everybody so fucking idiotic in this town to make the plot work. To me, that's where the writing of some of these slashers start to really grind my gears. You can make Myers powerful and intimidating and imposing without making everybody else an idiot, because it just takes away from the impact of what you're doing. And given where they went in Halloween Ends, I think they kind of screwed themselves with some of the things that they decided to do in that film by making him so impenetrable and so unstoppable in this film. So I know some of you guys love this one. I have friends that adore this movie. I think it's best of the franchise. It's not for me. It's one of the worst. And now we have the new dog on the street, Halloween Ends. And where's he gonna put it? Where's it gonna go? I'm gonna stick it in Evil Dies Tonight, right next to Halloween 2018. Now, I've seen this film 2 times at this point. I'm gonna watch it one more time on this channel in a live watch-along at some point over the next week. And then I'll probably just sit on it for a while. I don't wanna watch any movie more than 3 times in that fast succession. But Halloween Ends, to me, is a very complicated experience, because on one hand, as I said with Halloween 2, boldness, uniqueness, doing something different, doing something against the grain, that tends to work for me. Even Halloween 3, that's even higher on this list. I kind of like it when these franchises do something weird and unique and different, because, I mean, we're 13 fucking films in, and as much as I love seeing Michael Myers fuck people up, I can take a little different story every once in a while. I value that. So the whole thing here with Corey Cunningham and taking a big, gigantic risk and making the movie focus on him and him letting the evil inside and what he's going to do with that and putting the Laurie and Michael stuff in the back burner, I was kind of there for it for the whole movie. I was kind of surprised how much it was actually working for me. And honestly, if that was its own movie, I probably would enjoy it even more. This movie was hovering around like 4 out of 5 for the first 2/3 of the film, because I really appreciated how wild and different it was and just refreshing. But I really, really did not like how they wrapped up that Corey Cunningham storyline. I'm not going to get into any spoilers here. Did a full hour-plus long spoiler review if you guys want to check that out of this movie, and I'm going to talk about it even more as we continue to go through this content the next couple of weeks, but did not feel like the ending that they gave that story was satisfying at all, and it kind of made the first two-thirds of the film, the first hour of the film, feel like a bit of a waste. And then you get into the Laurie versus Michael stuff that this movie was sold off of and marketed off of, and the poster and the trailer and the name, and it kind of feels like an afterthought. And the final fight didn't feel as visceral or as exciting as the fight in Halloween 2018 or the fight in Halloween H2O, which is a little ridiculous to me. You had all the opportunity and all the resources in the world to make this thing fucking rock, and to me they didn't. So it's a mixed bag for me, and I think it's always going to be a mixed bag. I don't see myself being one of the extreme, hard, different sides to where people think this is like one of the greatest Halloween horror films ever made, and some people think this is the worst in the franchise. I think I'm going to be steadily in the middle of that argument for the rest of my time as a Halloween fan. So it's a weird movie. I think that the idea that they had here to go for the Corey Cunningham stuff and explore evil and how it penetrates people differently and how it works with people differently and how it works as an infection in this town, I think that's a damn good idea for like a Halloween anthology spinoff. I don't think it has any place in the final film of a trilogy that you have been setting up, and nothing in this movie was set up over the past two films. Nothing. So that is it, guys. That is my tier ranking of the Halloween franchise. Let me know what yours could be. If you go on to Tier Maker and make one, tag me in it on Twitter, and stay tuned for my actual ranking from worst to best of all 13 of these films coming to you in about a day or two. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed this, please click over here for all of my Halloween movie reviews. I've reviewed every single one of them in depth, and I'm also going to put my ranking from last year of the Halloween franchise with Halloween Kills, so you can prime yourself for where that list is going to change here in a day or so, because it's going to change. Like and share this video, hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed it so you don't miss any of that content in the future, and as always, guys, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.